I see some people are here. Can you hear me? Sienna, I miss you and all of the students. So thank you for let me just trying to figure things out. I apologize. Was having some troubles at Facebook. So we have some people coming over here. So there we go. There we go. So yeah, Sienna, I do miss all the students. It's been a long few weeks, and we got just a few weeks more of your schooling. So hope to see all of you when we get back from Mass, and then when we come back to school in the fall. So I do miss you. So we have a few people watching, just a couple people watching, and I posted to the other media platforms that I'm doing this. So we'll see if a couple people join. Again, I apologize for this. Trying my best to do some of these new things. We'll see how it works. I've got two different computers going at the same time here. So I see we have 4 people. Please feel free to post some questions. I think you are limited to the number of characters here on YouTube, which is not the case over at Facebook. So I apologize for that. You can also send me the questions by email if you wish. So yeah, something about Facebook was not liking my computer and camera tonight. Either computer. I've got the two of them going, as I said. So neither one was being recognized by Facebook. So I want to set this up this way. And so if you want to post or email, so I don't know what caused the problem or what the solution really will be. I undid my collar. I apologize. So we're trying our best. Feel free to post a question. Got a few people watching. This is from Patrick Donnelly. Is there a particular saint that has inspired you the most? A particular saint that has inspired me the most. We just touched on this in this morning when we posted 2 Priests in a Podcast, and I mentioned this to Father Jordan when we were recording that. I would say I have 3 important saints in my life. Many more. I have a great devotion to learning as much about the saints as possible. But first there, Patrick, your patron, Saint Patrick. Great tradition in my Irish background, my own patronal name, Paul. But I would say the 3 most important in my sense of my spirituality, my sense of the church, my place in the church, Saint Joseph, the husband of Mary, the caretaker of Jesus and Mary. I think he's one of the most profound men in all of human history for whom no word is recorded. Second, I think in the modern era, 2 more out of 3 come from the modern era. Maximilian Kolbe for his not only his ministry, but ultimately what led to his martyrdom in Auschwitz. his decision to give himself in the place of a father of children, so that he would die in his stead. And finally, and probably the most vivid for me, is Pope St. John Paul. Clearly, in his papacy, which began when I was in about 7th grade, truly informed my sense of church, my sense of ministry. There for a long time, my era would be referred to as the John Paul II priests, and so I take very much to heart the example that he gave in his ministry. So I hope that helps answer your question. And some others might post a few more. We've got a small but hearty group, 18 people watching right now. So if you have a question, feel free to post it. Let's see. What types of prayer, Sienna's asking, what types of prayers should we be praying during this time? Well, everybody has a little bit of a different disposition of how they like to pray. Some people like to be completely silent and let thoughts pop into their head, and let the images of God speaking to them, the Holy Spirit speaking to them, pop into their head. Others want to, kind of offer to the Lord more of their own thoughts, and let the reaction of the feelings, the sense of peace, follow from that. I think in this time there are so many opportunities. In fact, I was going to talk about if I was able to start right at 7, I was going to use the Memorare, a prayer to Our Lady, asking her intercession. This month of May is devoted to Mary. So praying the Rosary, I think, is very good. It teaches you a certain discipline of repeating something, so that you might use that repetition to clear the mind and focus on the scriptural passages, the mysteries of the Rosary. But the Memorare, I printed it off so that I could use it tonight. But it's a good prayer. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thine intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not mine petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. So, Sienna, I would say for you got to decide what type of prayer you want to. You want to speak first and then listen, or you want to listen first and then speak? It's a little bit of a different, reflects a little bit of your personality, I'm sure. I think praying the Rosary is good. Praying before meals is good. Praying before bedtime is really good. Praying right after you kind of wake up or get started in the morning, maybe on your drive or walk to school, taking some time to offer a prayer, whether it's a prepared prayer. You can just say, every morning I'm going to do an Our Father, a Hail Mary, and a Glory Be on the drive to school. And then every night before I go to bed, I'll do something like that, maybe the 3, but I'll also do a review of the day. What could I have done better? Call that an examination of conscience. Were there any mistakes I made, any sins I committed? But also do an examination of blessings. What did God do for you today? Primarily, what did God do for you in your prayer and sacraments, or through other people, through your parents, through your classmates, through your teachers? Be sure we have a reason to be thankful for all of these things. So that's that's good. Let's see, Brennan Reinfleisch, what's the current idea for the Mass schedules when we get back? The original schedule? Yes, so Sunday Mass schedules. When we start back, our plan at this point for the Catholic comeback, as Archbishop Listecki has called it, is to, at each of the 2 parishes, St. Eugene, St. Monica, to have the same 3 Sunday masses, Saturday night, 1 on Saturday night and 2 on Sunday. So St. Eugene, that's 4:30, 8:30, and 11. And at St. Monica, that's 5 p.m., 8 a.m., and 10:15. We will probably live stream for the foreseeable future at least one of the 2 early Sunday morning ones, the 8 or the 8:30, probably the 8 o'clock, primarily because of the timing, primarily because of the way the equipment can be set up. So we'll live stream the 8 o'clock from St. Monica for June. we may try to switch back and forth. There's some challenge to that, but we're trying to work that out. So yes. So St. Monica's. So you go on to ask, can we do 3? What we're interpreting, the Archbishop allows the interpretation of the 3 Sunday masses can include a massive anticipation. So we will have a Saturday night and 2 Sunday, as I look at the rest of your question. We can't necessarily do that. I'm worried about trying to do 7:39 and 11 like you have listed, primarily because of that 7:30 and 9, the time in between to exit everybody slowly and orderly, because we can't just let you gather. That's one of the restrictions in the directives, that you'll be dismissed and sent to particular exits. Then we have to go through and sanitize the space. So trying to do 7:30 and 9 might be a little tight, a little tough. So we got to spread out the timing a little bit on that. So Saturday, it'll be just like the previous Sunday weekend mass schedules. So, all right. I'm glad that makes sense, Brandon. How should I pray for help? Chris and Christine Albrightson. How should I pray for help? Now, part of this would be determined by, well, what is the help that you need? What is the help that you need? The best first prayer is always a prayer to God, your will be done. Your will be done. Even Christ himself, when he was in his most human moment and asking the cup of suffering to pass by him, if you can take this cup, his final prayer was, your will, thy will be done. Your will, but not mine. So that's our first prayer. It's a little different than going, so it's for Johnny on an important test. So God, we're always supposed to do our part. We as Catholics believe it is both spirit and body. It is both, mind and soul. It is always that fullness of who we are. So I hope, Johnny, you haven't gone, for the entire semester with no studying, no homework, and then expect that God will just give you that knowledge by some miracle as you walk in or start online. What you have to do is you pray every day for the will to be committed to the work you have to do, whether that's being a student, whether that's being an employee, whether that's being a husband, wife, son, father, mother, grandson, whatever it is. You always pray that you have the strength and integrity and intention to do what God has asked you to do in the circumstance that he has placed you. Then you pray that, God's plan for you be made known. Be made known. You can be doing real well in a subject. You could be doing real well in something, but it might not be God's plan. So he studies too much and is just worried. Well, then the prayer, I would suggest the prayer is for peace. Prayer is for the confidence. God made him a very smart young man. God made him a very able young man. Now he's just got to give him a little more confidence. And in the same way that at a certain point we have to say, I'm thankful for what God has given me, no matter how simple or how complex it is. I pray in thankfulness that I am ready for this test. I pray that I am ready to take on responsibilities in whatever role in life we have. So it's more than, you can't... God does not necessarily respond to prayers, please God, give me the numbers to win the lottery. What he does respond to is, God, I've done my part. Help me understand your part and your role and your encouragement. Your will be done. So I think Johnny's going to do fine. It's good to be worried sometimes. That's the mind telling the heart that I better study tonight. But I think he's pretty studious. So let's see. Lisa Gregg. Any idea what might happen with the confirmands? My son Oscar is among them. Excuse me for a second. We are waiting to determine the best plan. There are a couple of layers to that. One is the Archbishop wants to, as we roll out the celebration of the Mass, beginning with Pentecost, with a number of restrictions, We want to see how that goes. We want to see how the health issues are continuing. We want to have a manner to do the celebration as well as possible. We kind of, there are a couple of different categories of things that have been deferred. We've deferred a number of baptisms. We've deferred a number of weddings. Some are willing to go ahead. I've got a wedding this weekend where it'll just be 10 people, and others want to wait till after they can have the whole family, the extended family there. Then there are the larger celebrations. First Holy Communion has been postponed, as has confirmation, and that affects you with your son Oscar. So I would say we want to wait to see how just the practical reality of celebrating the larger masses goes. We would love it to kind of, if we can be patient enough till a time when we don't have to be confined. Normally at both of the parishes, First Holy Communion is a full church. So to try and do a First Holy Communion with only 25% of the kids or the space available would be very difficult. Same with confirmation. So we want it to be good. We want it to be holy. We want it to be memorable. So we're doing a lot of wait and see. The other question for confirmation is the archbishop is still deciding, depending on when it can happen and how it can happen. Can it still be done by by himself, the archbishop, and the two auxiliaries, Bishop Sherman and Bishop Haynes? If that doesn't seem like it's going to work, if we get a little postponed a little too long, he may delegate the vicars of the diocese and the deans of the diocese, of which I'm actually both, or he will delegate across the diocese all the pastors, which could end up meaning I might do the confirmations for St. Eugene and St. Monica. The hope is that one of the bishops would do so, but we've got to wait and see. One of the people are saying, if we can do these groups of masses for like 250, can I do my wedding? It was not going to be that large. One of the challenges in the thinking is that, like a wedding or a funeral, and we've got a funeral coming up this week, and we're limited to 10 still. Wedding or funeral, if you have it larger, it's because everybody there will be a family that they don't live together probably in the same house, but they want to congregate, they want to gather. So it's very hard to control. God bless everybody telling me, oh, we'll do it. It's very hard to control. Whereas, coming with saying St. Monica or St. Eugene have to be limited to 25% of the space, that's divided over 30, 40, 50, 100 families, and they can comfortably separate and understand the separation. So we don't necessarily, we worry about, waiting. We got to wait a little bit for weddings, funerals, confirmation, First Communion, and the larger celebrations. So hope that's a long answer. Patrick asks, are priests allowed to have pets? Yes, we're allowed to have pets. The challenge is the pattern of life that we have. I would very much love to have a dog. I do not have the ability, the time to train a dog. I would love to have either a German Shepherd or a Belgian Shepherd that I would name Torquemada. And someone will have to look that up, who Torquemada was. It would be Torque for short. But I know that I would not be a good caretaker to a dog. I just don't have the tempo of life to walk them at the right times, to clean up after them in the way that it should, or care for them in the way they should. I would love to have a dog as self-sufficient as Lassie or Rin Tin Tin. And some of you will have to look up who those are as well. But that would be my dream. So Torquemada, or a German Shepherd or a Belgian Shepherd named Torquemada. James Young is asking, how are parish budgets holding up? We just got reports. I got reports from both of my parishes today. We're holding up okay. People have been very generous. A lot of people have made the effort to mail in or drop off their envelopes, if that's the way. A lot of people are converting their manner of giving to automatic online giving. So that is quite helpful. And a lot of people giving significant gifts just for this time of crisis. And then we did qualify for the Small Business Administration loans, which we presume will turn into grants. Now the government is changing some of the rules right now. So we'll see how that works. But we're doing okay. But I don't want to give anybody the image, oh, we can relax now. I mean, offertory is everything. And we go into the months now where we don't have school tuition as kind of the cash flow. We don't have program fees. And, we still have to pay the bills. We still have to pay, we're committed to paying staff. We're committed to paying salaries and benefits. We're trying not to lay anybody off. The small business administration loan, while we can ascribe it to some other expenses, utilities don't count, mowing the lawn. Utilities don't count, the cleaning supplies that we're going through. Utilities that don't count the fact that I've had to invest in cables and cameras and wires and things like that. We're making do with very limited, but we're trying to do with limited as well. So thank you for asking, James. Please do, everyone, continue to support these parishes or your own parish. Dina Artlip, will holy water be available after the 26th? Right now, the Archbishop, or the guidance, and this one comes directly from the health authorities, they're saying no, don't have holy water fonts filled for the time being. And that's just because as people dip and if they somehow infect or spread anything into the water, it lives there for a time. So we won't for a period of time. And some people have asked about, can we add a little chlorine, a little bleach, a little this, a little that? At a certain point, when you start adding too much, it's no longer, it's no longer primarily water. It's no longer, what you want. And then you create other problems, people's sensitivity to the chlorine or to the bleach, and without clearly signing it that it's that. So yeah, there won't be holy water fonts right away. Would it be possible to have a mass during the week for senior parishioners? Why only the weekend? Sheila, I wish I had a good answer for that. I think the goal is to kind of roll out the opportunity for public mass with a particular emphasis on Sundays. The thinking I can ascribe to it. I had a different meeting, or a meeting on a different matter with the Archbishop a couple days ago, and I didn't ask this, but I think to move towards the daily mass schedule would beg the question of the rosary, the perpetual help devotion, the groups that gather and meet, while small, but would be, are drawn together. So I think the powers that be see the Sunday Mass as important to serve. We want to celebrate Sunday Mass, and B, a circumstance where it's actually enough critical mass of people without, that we can control that it doesn't get too large, and we can, maintain kind of all the different things. The priest is involved, the liturgist is involved, things like that. So, the decision not to move ahead right away with daily masses, I think, is still being discussed, and it may change. But right now, that's the thinking. We're going to stay focused on providing the Sunday Mass, and work into the week from there. Amy Reinfleisch, who plays chess in the house? I just noticed all the sets on the bookshelves behind you. Yes, those are, so you can't, you see some, I guess you see, I've got about 1, 2, 3, I've got 6 sets there. I play chess. I've always enjoyed playing since I was a kid. There's a couple different, I have one from the Ukraine, one from Uganda. That it kind of has locally designed pieces and whatnot. Then I have one from Italy. I have one from Kyrgyzstan, which I visited a couple years ago. And actually I have a three-way chess set, which is a very interesting thing to play and to use. So, Uh, Sienna, are priests allowed to take off their collars? I undid my collar when I was getting a little frustrated and working on the computer and the two computers. So yes, I mean, we can take them off. We wear our black clerical shirts when we are in, it's my uniform for work. Um, when I'm not necessarily in a setting where I have to be the priest, or when I'm doing some work where it's just not a convenient way to dress. If I'm exercising, which I should do more of, if I'm out at my mother's doing yard work, then I don't wear a collar. I wear jeans and a t-shirt and sweatshirt like everybody else. So tonight I'm at home. It's been a bit of a long day. Got a little frustrated with the computer. So I kind of undid the collar as I was typing away and getting a little frustrated. So I generally I am a little more relaxed than say Father Jordan or the younger priests, partly because it's so new for them. It's like I don't know if your dad wears a tie to work. He doesn't have to wear it all the time. We would wear a collar probably more than your parents or men in the business world wear ties, because it's a statement to the world of our vocation, our ministry, our presence. I think people knowing that priests are out there is helpful to foster vocations. So there are plenty of different opportunities in that regard. Let's see. Someone's texting me saying, sorry about the virtual Narthex. They didn't see the messaging going to come to YouTube. Let's see. Do you see this financial challenge as a starting point to rethink or reorganize some of the items in the budget? For instance, can families spread tuition payments over 12 months? I think we are constantly trying to review how the budget works and is built. The school you mentioned tuition. So school, any budget for any institution like ours, 80% of it is driven by salaries and benefits and staff. Only 20% is really operational consumables or other than salary and benefits. In a parishes like ours, the school budget, with their staff, with their needs, encompasses pretty much 2/3 of the parish-wide budget. Now, those are, it's not 2/3 of the 80. Well, it is 2/3 of the 80%. So the school is a huge, just budget center, and how we set up, it's developed over the years. I mean, I remember my mom talking, as a kid, that back in the day, Catholic schools were much less expensive, relatively speaking. Back when I went to grade school, I began Catholic grade school for first grade in 1972. So you can all do the math there if you'd like. Everything had to be paid before the first day of school. Now, obviously, with the way the costs have gone, we need to have payment plans and spreading it out. I do believe it can be spread out over 10 months right now. I should know that, but each of the two schools are independent, so there's some slight differences in how they handle their tuition payment systems. So I don't have an absolute, but I think we can look at the options. I think it's a question of needing to have the money in the bank ahead. So is it 12 months, beginning in, June or May even of the previous year? So, that's a question there, but I'll take it to mind and reflect on it. Hi, Father. I would like to learn more about the prophets. Any reading materials you could recommend? The prophets. Well, I'd have to look that one up, and I might do that rather than try to talk off the cuff. What I would recommend, anytime you're looking for books to read to learn more about scripture or the faith, particularly when it comes to biblical, all I would ask that you can go on Amazon and look at, try to look at the covers, if they have it and they show it, try to look at the ads. Are the people giving, statements, good contribution to the reflection, good spirituality, whatever, good research? Are there any noticeable Catholics? A bishop, a cardinal, a professor at Notre Dame, a professor at Steubenville University, the big Catholic universities. So look, is it because there are a lot of resources out there that will utilize kind of an innocuous kind of publishing house label and quotes and whatnot, and you won't know that, well, this is probably much more evangelical, which is not entirely bad, but it also means that it has a different, sometimes a different sense and different lens through which they're looking at the prophets in particular, because the prophets can be a mixed bag of how things that are prophecies are to be interpreted. And I think we have, with the Catholic magisterium, the way we've learned to teach it, the way we've learned to read it, and the way we've learned to teach it has been very important. So if you're going to look for any book about our Catholic faith, whether it's the use of the scriptures, whether it's, our sacraments, whether it's our church history, look for good Catholic publishing companies, that are clearly, they want to be a Catholic publishing company, or at least have a large segment of their audience. Look to see who's recommending the book, who's doing, the dust cover quotes on the back, and who's supporting it, endorsing it. And then, go with recommendations. I'll look up a few things. I'll make a note to myself, books about the prophets, and see if I can have that ready for next week. So we shall see. All right, let's see. You're an excellent pastor. Thank you very much, Lisa, for saying so. What is your process for writing your homily? Who was the biggest influence in this area? To whom do you like to listen? Well, thank you for your compliment. An excellent speaker. I don't know if you said excellent pastor. I'm an excellent speaker. I have been blessed. I've been lucky. It's interesting to people. I am technically, when I did to enter seminary, we go through psychological tests, and I am technically an introvert. I know that surprises a lot of people. And that's both in manner of you contemplate things and you decide things and discern things. But like in these last 6 weeks of confinement, if you've watched the Two Priests in a Podcast, I'll kind of make jokes. Father Jordan really cannot handle. He would never make it as a hermit. He would never make it as a monk. He gets fidgety, he gets batty. I mean, he's got to go and do things. Whereas I am more than happy. I've got plenty to do. I can sit quietly for long periods of time. I need some stimulus. I've got, too many computer screens, and I got the big TV and things like that. But so I'm a little bit of an introvert, and that's just a way of saying that speaking is something that, on the one hand, I think does come naturally, or at least I've been able to master it because I like sharing, my thoughts. And so my process for preparing a homily, ideally, there are times when it's, Friday night, Saturday morning, and I'm going, what are the readings? What am I going to do? The ideal is early in the week, get a sense of what's coming. Now, during the Easter season, that's usually pretty easy because the tradition is always focused, on Good Shepherd and Bread of Life and things like that. So I kind of know what's coming. But then it's, what about the readings jumps out at me this year? The readings for most of the year in the Catholic Church are on a 3-year, the Sunday readings are on a 3-year cycle. So every 3 years, you'd hear the same readings on a given, the 5th Sunday of Easter, or during ordinary time, the 21st Sunday of ordinary time, every 3 years. So some of it, I may remember what I preached 3 years ago. I try to avoid that. I don't write them down. I don't keep copies. If I made notes, I don't keep it. I want it to be what is touching me at this moment. So I read it. I've said this quite often. A good, read the scriptures and read all 3 of the passages, and the fourth being the Psalm, but read them all as if you were reading chapters of a mystery novel, great Agatha Christie or an Alfred Hitchcock mystery. And if something jumps out at you as unusual, like that was always, why did the writer put that in there? Why did the movie maker put that little detail in there. Now they call them Easter eggs in all of the superhero movies. Why did they put them in there? So that you would notice, and maybe it reveals something when you dig deeper. So I always look for something that's out of place or unusual, so that I can then just kind of figure out for myself what what does this mean, and why did I notice it this time around. I am noticing, because of the coronavirus quarantine, because of the circumstances in my life, I am noticing things in the scripture that I never noticed before. I mean, and some of it is just my age, and I now that I live in the house with, one 27-year-old, two 30-year-olds, and I've got two seminarians coming for the summer. So, pray for me. But we've got, they're so young, and what jumps out at them more is connected to what they just finished in their studies. Whereas what jumps out at me is much different. I mean, I'm not the most experienced guy in the world, but 26 years of priesthood, some things, I notice things in a different way right now. So to whom do I listen? I very much like the down home homespun style of Cardinal Dolan. So if I hear his reflections, I appreciate that. I do like Bishop Barron. His are very good. He is brilliant. So where Cardinal Dolan is much more down home, I think a little bit more my style of family stories, experiential stories. Bishop Barron has those, but he's far more intellectual. I joke that I hope I don't scandalize anybody. We only have 31 listeners. I want to do a drinking game. Whenever he uses the word evocative, it's evocative of something. I said, nobody uses that in everyday life. And I use big words sometimes. So those would probably be the two that come to mind, the two modern, writers. I think, the historic great, homilists of the past are also important. So, so those would be my two examples. All right. I hope that helps, Lisa. Thank you for your compliment about my preaching. Joe Musin here. What are the roles and responsibilities of the Metropolitan Archbishop in relation to the other bishops of the province? In other words, what role does Archbishop Listecki have in overseeing the diocese across the entire state, as opposed to the Archdiocese of Milwaukee? Well, an archbishop, and the notion of the metropolitan, same word, why we call it a big city, a metropolitan area. Same reason why Superman, the big city is metropolis. It's the big city. It's the big city. So the historic role of the metropolitan, an archbishop as opposed to a bishop, is really to be there as a source of support. They're all equals. They are all bishops. They all have the same authorities within their own diocese. The archbishop would have two responsibilities. One, to use the greater resources of the metropolitan see, which may or may not have access to universities. I think take a comparison between Milwaukee and the smallest of the four suffragan dioceses. In the state of Wisconsin, there are 5 dioceses: the Archdiocese of Milwaukee, the Diocese of Madison, the Diocese of Green Bay, the Diocese of La Crosse, Wisconsin, and the Diocese of Superior, all the way up to and it's the northern third of the state. It's the largest geographically, smallest in the number of Catholics. But they're in Superior, no Catholic colleges or universities. In Superior, not as many, big banks and companies to help, be a sponsor of this or that. So it's expected that maybe the metropolitan would help facilitate, would help support the smaller diocese. It is also the case, one of the few things that do exist in canon law, that the metropolitan has some oversight, and it's very passive. It's very low level, in the sense that every year each of the suffragan dioceses have to submit to the metropolitan a report. a financial report, and just a general state of their diocese. And if the metropolitan has heard anything, has concerns, he is to, in a fraternal way, address those or seek to address those. Sometimes, if there's concerns about a diocese that are coming from the Vatican, from the Holy See, they might contact the nuncio in Washington, D.C., the Pope's representative, and the Pope's representative might ask the metropolitan, look into this. Now, all of that being said, it's not a perfect hierarchy, because that submission of a report, that submission of, a financial report and some role of oversight, the Archbishop of Milwaukee submits those same materials to the most senior of the four bishops in the four suffragans. So someone else is to support him. Maybe it won't be the same right now. It would be the Bishop Ricken of Green Bay is the most senior suffragan of the four. And, they have some Catholic universities within their diocese and whatnot, but we have those too. So we don't necessarily need the resources, but there is a responsibility for Bishop Ricken to review in a cursory way the finances, or to, if there's been a question about something happening in Milwaukee, to ask the Archbishop about it. So it is a sense of the hierarchy, but they are all equals. And in a certain way, there's a check and balance on what happens and how that it plays itself out for the Archbishop himself. And I think it's a very good, we underestimate the wisdom of the church in some of these things. And we so want to go with a business model in many ways. So, so that's someone asked up earlier, and I did skip over it. How do I discern God's will from my own will? Phil, that is a really, really good question. Ideally, there's no difference. I think what the question is how do I start knowing when my will is straying from God's will? Well, what are the things that are human faults and failings? If my will, has to do with pride or arrogance, if my will is, short-sighted and superficial, we're moving further and further away from God's will. If the thing that I am discerning, that I am seeking the will of God about, is about the things that God would want me to think, is what I'm doing really loving? Is what I'm thinking about or trying to decide on going to lean more towards something selfish or more towards servant leadership? That's the way. I mean, I think, there are probably some finer points where it's confusing and it's difficult. And then it's a question of accepting the advice of others. And probably you use the word discern. And that's a very good word, a very important word. That to the extent we use it for vocations. And that's sometimes one of the toughest things, what is it God's will that, I become a priest, that someone becomes a religious brother or a religious sister? And sometimes what we think God's asking of us there may be other things that are intruding on our decision process. It may be the case that, it's not entirely, and that's where we accept, formation advisors, spiritual directors, saying, you may think you have a call, but it's not really, taking root, and it's not showing itself in always the way that the church wants. So I think, to define the distinction between your will always be the things that, are more human, and God's will more Christ-like and more divine, and then accepting the advice of others. Just because it's discerning my own will or God's will doesn't mean I'm the only one who contributes to it. Again, using the example of a vocation, there are people who encouraged my vocation. There are people who discouraged me from becoming, an electrical engineer, which is what I started college for. Not in a malicious way, but, they just said, Paul, are you going to be happy with that? And that's kind of the conclusion I came to as well. So, Anita, open, once the churches are open, can Father Stephen and Father Patrick help with the masses at our parish, or will they be helping at other parishes? So Father Stephen Buting, whom you've seen on some of the morning masses, is assigned to start in a few weeks, start in June, as the associate pastor of Lumen Christi in Mequon. So he would not really be available here. Father Patrick is assigned to studies and will be in that situation for at least another year. So his schedule, he has to go down to Mundelein in Illinois a couple of days and nights each week, and so his availability is a little affected by that, and also his weekend availability. Often twice he's been assigned to help out at a parish where the pastor's on sabbatical, or they're missing, their associate is away for a period of time. So he may be available to us, but I don't know. So it's up to Father Jordan and I. We get help outs, those two, or, some of the retired priests, the senior priests, as we can and as we need them. So, I hope that helps. So any other questions coming up here? There is, some people sent in questions, but I don't know if they're on the line tonight. So I may save these. And I even, we're already at 50 minutes because I was able to, or 46 minutes, I was able to start streaming. So I thank you. We've got about 30 people. I don't know what happened with Facebook. Oh, you know what I will do, since Mother's Day weekend was yesterday. People have already asked someone sent me an email earlier from the Two Priests in a Podcast. Someone was, I don't know whether they were angry or offended. They were asking about calling how my family, my siblings and I, a long time ago started referring to my mother as the Iron Lady, which comes from the fact that was a nickname for Margaret Thatcher, the former Prime Minister of England. In the days of Ronald Reagan, she was, they were the two pillars, and then John Paul. That's, I think, the whole reason the Soviet Union fell. But my mom is from New York, so she has a little bit of a New York accent. Her mother is from Newfoundland, which I've talked about, which also adds a little twist to her accent. And then my mom went to my mom speaks in a very prim and proper way, perfect enunciation. So she sounds British. To all of you here in the Milwaukee area, that mix of New York, Newfoundland, and, perfect enunciation. She sounds to everybody British. And she also, in her day, looked like Margaret Thatcher. I have a picture here of my mom in 1984. This is the portrait that I have hanging in my room. And I'll see if you see the resemblance with Margaret Thatcher. I got to turn this so that I don't know whether I'm helping or hurting the glare here. Oop, yeah, that I'm hurting. So there we go. So that's my mom. About 34, 35 years ago, and she looks like Margaret Thatcher, has that regal presence like Margaret Thatcher, but that also that hard, that tough side of her as well. So that's why we call her the Iron Lady. She's tough. She's tough. She's got some health challenges right now. Keep her in your prayers for me as well. So I think, unless there are any more questions, we can begin to wrap up here. I do have actually a picture of my father as well. He passed away in 1980, but since I was taking down Mom's picture, I decided to grab his. Lisa Gregg, thank you for an evocative session. You are quite welcome. As I said, we have to have a drinking game for every time Bishop Barron uses evocative, evokes something. So it leads to something else. So I thank you. I apologize for the difficulty. I hope I can figure it out. We may switch permanently to the YouTube platform here. The biggest challenge with YouTube is, the comment section is a little more limited. But So, Paula, I'm glad I was able to do this tonight as well. So make the most of these days in continued quarantine. Do start looking ahead to Pentecost. It's truly going to be a moment when the Holy Spirit comes to this community. So know of my prayers for you and how thankful I am for all that you do. So God, I always pray God's blessings upon you in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. You have a great, great evening. All right. Take care.